All right, guys. So you've heard me mention multiple times up to this point that I work in IT service management. And I've already kind of defined the different components that make up that specialty or philosophy of IT, just that side of IT, which is more on the business side, right? So there's another side to that coin. Somewhat, I guess you can say like a subcategory called IT operations management. These two tend to get a little bit confused because you hear operations, you think that's the business side of IT, which it can be, but there's actually some very clear differences between the two. So let's go ahead and touch on that for today. We're going to compare IT service management, IT operations management, or ITOM, or like maybe ITOM. I've never heard anyone call it that. So if you've never heard that, you heard it here first. But with IT operations management, we're going to touch on that first. ITOM, IT operations management, ITOM, whatever you want to call it, is a subdiscipline that falls under the IT service management umbrella. The main focus of operations management is to ensure that whatever services that your company is providing is basically available at all times, not only to the customers, but to your internal users as well within your organization, the different employees and C-suite executives and people, whatever proprietary websites and things like that that your company uses for their own employees, as well as the services they provide to customers, that they're always readily available to be used. In comparison to IT service management, this can be seen as a more short-sighted focus because operations management, when you focus on the availability aspect of it, it's kind of a red flag situation. Like if a website that your company uses, that you use to do your job or that you use to check your payroll, something like that goes down and they're like, there's a bad gateway or the website just says there was a timeout, it can't connect, whatever the case is, you get a certain error code and you notice that it's happening to your entire team, it's happening to everyone in the company, wherever the case is, then you raise that red flag to the IT team, which is usually the operations team, your IT team. And that's when it's like, hey, we can't connect to anything. So what's going on? And then they fix that issue at hand. And that's where it gets that kind of sense of like it's very short-sighted versus IT service management. Believe it or not, it's a weird misnomer because like even on my contract, I'm on the customer operations team, but my role pertains to service management. The IT operations management pertains to like IT teams whenever there's connectivity issues and things like that. So it's a weird misnomer. Now we're going to divert a little bit into something else before we continue on the regular topic. So when I defined IT operations management, I mentioned that their role is to always make sure that different IT services and things are always readily available. So availability, and I even touched on integrity before, so we might as well just touch on this real quick. You're going to go over something called the CIA triad, especially if you intend on going into cybersecurity. But at this point, even if you don't plan on going to cybersecurity, the CIA triad is something you really should just know in general. This isn't something that should be relegated just to people that work in cybersecurity, whether they're red teamers, blue teamers, GRC folks. It's not just something only they should know. This is something everyone should know. And at this point, I think it's safe to say many of the bigger tech companies or that have technical products and services that they offer to other companies, I think it's safe to say if your employers are anything like mine, the company I'm contracted to, they probably have some cybersecurity related message on your login screen. Something along the lines of cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility, not just the security teams or someone, something like that, right? So let's go ahead and touch on that real quick and we'll dive more into the CIA triad later. So the CIA triad, as the name suggests, has three main components. C for confidentiality, I for integrity, A for availability. Confidentiality is pretty self-explanatory. I think we've all experienced this just in regular everyday life. Confidentiality basically means this information is for needs to know only. If this person doesn't need to know this or I don't want them to know it, do not disclose this information to them, right? Integrity being the next part, I kind of touched on this earlier when it came to databases, but I don't think I defined it clearly. So let me just make sure that I cover this. Integrity basically means that, at least when it comes to data, that the data is basically accurate. It hasn't been changed by somebody that wasn't supposed to change it. The data, as it was initially recorded, has been changed by someone that wasn't supposed to access it. Then you have availability. This is a key part of operations management, which basically means if something's not connecting, something's wrong. If you're trying to listen to music on a music app, but the app in its entirety, not just one song, not just one album, not just one artist. And even then, that's an availability issue. But the entire music app, whether it's Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, whatever the case is, like their entire apps were to go down so you can't use them at all, that's an availability issue. You can't use the service at all, but you're paying for it. That's not a good look to the company. That's the type of thing, or that's pretty much the main thing that operations teams, IT operations teams tend to handle. Okay, now let's go ahead and get back on track. So operations, IT operations or IT ops tends to have three main pillars that falls under its label or category. One, you have network infrastructure management. Two, you have help desk. And three is server and device management. I'm going to cover each of these briefly. I don't want to linger on these too. So network infrastructure management, or just network infrastructure, I kind of alluded to this in a previous video, that the network infrastructure basically pertains to how a company's or organization's network is laid out. Not all networks are laid out the same, because the way that you lay out a network can determine how efficient it is. It can determine availability. It can determine like how easy would it be for hackers and outside threat actors to come in and start compromising the system. Help desk operations is pretty self-explanatory. I'm pretty sure everyone at this point has had situations, phone, laptop, whatever the case is, where you need some help. They're like, hey, if you have any issues, give this number a call, and our tech support agents will help you, help desk agents, things like that. That's pretty much help desk operations in a nutshell. And I already kind of touched on this, but server and device management pretty much pertains to what I said about the server, not only when it comes to where it's located in a network, but making sure that the server itself is up and running. So servers, laptops, and this is kind of where the OSI model comes in. All right, so the main difference between service management and IT ops is that IT ops is more technically inclined than service management. Service management can have technical sides to it, but they're not usually like that in nature. That's why you have, like on Indeed or LinkedIn, if you're looking for certain job titles, and again, you're looking for any of the PMs, product, project, portfolio, program, maybe some other form of PM management job position, right? They have those regular ones, but you also have a decent amount. I don't think they're as popular, but you do have those decent amount of technical PMs, technical product manager, technical project manager, technical program manager. They make it a clear distinction because, at least inherently in nature, program managers, project managers, and those people, they don't need to be technically inclined. If they do, meaning like they can program or do something else, then it's a bonus. But you also have those other positions where that's just the name of the game. Like they need you to be technically inclined, maybe have Linux experience, how to navigate an IDE, use SQL to access databases and query data to perform data analysis, things like that, right? So that's one of the main differences between IT ops and service management. IT ops, you might want to be prepared to go in with some technical skills under your belt. If you want to be more business inclined, but you're not afraid of learning some technical stuff here and there, kind of just to make your life a little bit easier, then service management might be better. For example, all of my reports are generated by Excel. They come out as CSV or Excel files, right? I don't have to learn how to code in Excel, which for those who don't know, Excel does have its own coding language. I didn't know that. And I started experimenting with it just a little bit to make my life a little bit easier when I have to format these Excel reports. I'm not like a pro at it. It's not a goal of mine, but it's something that's good to learn if I want to eventually, be proficient at it and maybe get another job title, get promoted, whatever the case may be. Again, the reason IT ops is more technically inclined than what I do is because they're in charge of server management, data management to a degree. Even when they're on the help desk and you're calling in saying something's wrong with my laptop, something's wrong with my phone, things like that, those are still technical issues that they have to be aware of. Like you don't want to be someone that, and I know this has happened. Like I've been told that this has happened. Say Microsoft Offices, right? In order for you to use the Microsoft Office stuff, Excel, Word, and things like that, at least before they went cloud, and I don't know if they still do this, but back when you had like the physical disks to upload that stuff into your computer, they would have the key on the back of the box so that they would be able to validate it and say, yeah, this is a legitimate copy of our software. So yeah, we'll allow you to download it onto your machine. And basically you're good to go from there. I've heard of a situation where someone encountered a situation like that, where the problem wasn't the laptop itself. The laptop was fine. It was the fact that they couldn't use the actual software. They didn't have a valid key. So they went to a certain company's like help desk, and Apparently this company, they don't like actually analyze the problem. They just have like a checklist of steps that they use indiscriminately. And so what they ended up doing was wiping the entire laptop clean completely when it wasn't even necessary, right? So those are the type of things that help desk people basically deal with on a day-to-day basis. And they also need to be able to piece that together and be like, oh yeah, your laptop itself mechanically is working totally fine. But whatever software that you're trying to use, maybe you need to resubscribe to it since everything's subscription based these days, or you just need to buy another copy of it, get the key that's on the back of a box, if that's even still a thing, and basically prove that this is a legitimate copy of the software and that you can use it again. But nothing's wrong with your physical computer. So that's the type of thing help desk people do. Just to name a couple of positions, well, one position that falls under the IT ops category, which is more technically inclined, is system administrator or sysadmin. This is a pretty technical role. A lot of people try to get into system administration as an entry level position. I guess it's possible from what I've heard, but I guess the general idea is that it's really not. That's something that's more mid level. Like once you get into tech, you work your way up through that over maybe 2-3 years once your technical skills have kind of grown at least a bit. Because once you're a system administrator, you're going to be responsible for a lot of things. To be a good system administrator, at least the general rule of it, you need to understand multiple things like cloud computing, cloud infrastructure, security, managing networks. Yeah, you're going to have to be pretty multifaceted to be a functioning system administrator or sysadmin. I think I've already kind of beat a dead horse with this part, but I think I've given a valid picture, a decent picture of what IT ops looks like. So let's make a direct contrast to what that looks like compared to IT service management. So ITSM and IT ops have one thing in common, and that's something called the ITIL framework, ITIL. And because they have this thing that's in common, their terms and names tend to be used interchangeably, but like I've already confirmed, they're not the same thing. Service management tends to have more of a bird's eye view of pretty much anything in the IT or tech landscape, right? Versus IT ops is more niched. Think of it like this. Business is at the core of everything. Whenever you get into an organization, whether engineering, architecture, development, wherever the case may be, sales even, you're worker bees. You know, you're carrying out the everyday operation. You're receiving directions. You may even do it routinely. Some are more dynamic, some roles are more static, but you're worker bees. You kind of just do what you're told, and the higher you go up, the more influence you'll have on business decisions. That's why, like certain people, like there are two people that are above me in my team, like my direct manager and even her direct manager, I believe. They both could move up probably multiple times they wanted to. It's been offered. Even one of my teammates, who's in the same position as me, but he's been doing this for 10 years, he doesn't want to move up. He's happy because if he was to move up, now he has to start doing things like actually leading meetings and other things. He doesn't really want to do that. My manager, she doesn't want to get too far removed from the customer service side of what we do. Her manager, same thing. If he moves up one more position, he doesn't have any like hands-on influence on what customers do. So moving up the corporate ladder isn't like linear. That's kind of why, like, if you look up the concept or Google image and things of the different sectors of a company, it's not like a straight line. It does look like a pyramid when it's like C-suite executives and mid to senior level people and like the entry level or just lower ranks of people and stuff like that. That is more accurate, not only in that usually the higher up you go, the more narrow that population grows, but also they cut it off into segments or categories because once you reach a certain level or category, your influence over the category below you drastically decreases. You're not going to have as much of a say, and your focus is going to be less on being technically inclined versus how does this affect our customers, numbers, meetings all day, things like that. C-suite executives, to my understanding, at least from my discussion with my manager, once you reach C-suite level, you're not really part of the daily operations of the company anymore. She said there are people who are C-suite executives that don't really do like day-to-day things pertaining to the company they work for, right? So they use that time to do other things for them. So that's where IT service management is someone like that. It's not like everyone's a top dog and all that stuff, but it has that functionality similar to a C-suite person where it's like they have a view of the overall landscape. They have to take many different things into consideration. Not to say ops doesn't, but it's a little more niched. Their stuff, again, is IT security, network infrastructure, things like that. But that's more on the technical side of things versus IT service management. They don't have to be technically inclined, but you're going to at least have to understand basic technical and networking principles, hence why we covered that in videos such as the one I'll put this one up here just to give you guys a good starting point, right? But yeah, hopefully that helped out, guys. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. I didn't mean to rant like that, but I just wanted to paint that picture very clearly for you guys. Go ahead and give me some feedback in the comment section below. I appreciate you showing up here with me again today, and I'll see you guys later.